a great real estate photo always has?
I would say just kind of angles to just whether it's in the walls or in the furniture, just something to kind of draw your eye into the space. Something that doesn't make it just a flat scene.
Welcome to Get the Picture podcast. I'm your host, Brad Sigal. I'm excited about today's guest. He's a lifelong friend of mine, and he's a real estate photographer based in Atlanta, Georgia. Today we'll get to hear about what it's like to make a living doing real estate photography. We'll talk about things like gear and settings, of course, but also some of the business side and just some of the day-to-day stuff that you may not think about when you think about real estate photography. So welcome to Get the Picture, Brian Nejedly.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great.
So let's just start out with a little bit about your story with photography. How did you get into photography, and what specifically led you to the niche of real estate photography?
I was originally a graphic designer and art director. My first job out of school happened to be at the Professional Photographers of America, which is a trade association. That got me exposure to just photography as a career and as a profession, which I had, again, I was into graphic design, which I got into kind of through making punk rock band flyers. So, I just had an appreciation for it and had always done it as a hobby, just to document traveling and, just for fun. But through that job and others and through hiring and working with photographers, just became attracted to that. And then through chance, one day was at soccer practice in Atlanta. Well, long story, I'll try and make a longer story short. One of my clients had a home in Eleuthera, Bahamas. And he said, hey, I know you can take, travel pictures. I know you can make a website. And this was in 1996, I think. So long before Airbnb or anything like that. And he said, come spend a couple weeks at my home in the Bahamas and take pictures of it and help me make a website to rent it. And there you go. And I said, okay. So somebody in Jamaica saw what I had done there when, again, I was at soccer practice and mentioned that I was going to be going to Jamaica. I had made a few trips there prior and said that he works for a company that rents villa properties in Jamaica and they're looking for a photographer. So I contacted the guy and he said, well, here's the place, come stay, take pictures. If I like the pictures, I'll pay you for it. If I don't, you had a free place to stay. And I'm okay, So I took him and he liked them and they next thing you know, it kind of became my new career. It caused me to move to Jamaica. It all shook out in a way that, I had gotten laid off from my interactive art director job in 2001. By then had been traveling to Jamaica several times and developed clients there, mostly through this one villa company. And it kind of became a realistic prospect to just pick up and move. And that's what I did.
That sounds like probably not the standard story for real estate photography, that you start doing resorts in Bahamas and in Jamaica. Sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, what's, again, around 2000 or so or 2020, I mean, when COVID hit, I had primarily been doing wedding photography in Jamaica, some villas, but not full time. And all of it just was kind of taken out overnight with border closed, travel was shut down, wasn't happening. And I had never really considered real estate photography in the States because, for reasons we might get into later, I was able to charge a lot more for vacation rental properties. They were larger properties, but the usage is different. Those are being used to generate income for years and years, whereas real estate listings have a very short lifespan. Agents aren't investing as much in those as, say, a property owner would in their vacation photography. So I just never really thought of it as a viable option up here. When it turns out that I had to move up here and I started doing it, I said, wait a minute, you can do just fine doing this if you're doing 2, 3, 4, 5 shoots a day. And that becomes impossible to manage the editing yourself. So that's when you kind of look at outsourcing your editing, which is probably another thing we'll touch on shortly. So yeah, I mean, that's it. I just started doing it, and agents, word of mouth has been how it's grown. And today, pretty busy. I'd say 10 to 15 shoots a week is average.
That's amazing. So for people who maybe aren't photographers, or if you're not in that industry and you're just thinking about real estate photography, like what might seem surprising that you can make a living doing that? Like most people probably think you can just sort of walk through a house and use your phone and snap a few pictures and that'll do it, and that's all there is to it. So for people who are listening who haven't thought much about it, what does professional real estate photography involve? Like why not just take quick pictures with your smartphone?
They wouldn't look as good. um, I think, part of it is you really have to have a wide angle lens. Um, Most homes you go into are not an ideal lighting situation. So you're either working with that and correcting it in editing, or you're using flash or LED or some form to light it and get it the way you want in camera.
Yeah, like
I'm glad you're
I was looking at some listings recently just for fun, and it was clear that they had just done that, like snapped some phone pictures, and it was almost comical how bad they were. You could even like in the bathroom mirror in the bathroom picture, you saw the person taking the picture in the reflection, and I don't know. You can definitely tell a difference once you start looking.
That's the worst case scenario. And I think for somebody that doesn't have familiarity with it, go to Zillow and just pick an area and just start scrolling through, and you'll see what jumps out at you, and what houses make you think, oh, I want to look at that house. I mean, even if you're not looking to move, you can just scroll through and get an idea of what looks good and what doesn't, or what doesn't grab your eye. It's competitive enough that I think agents really want to. It's really their face and their form of marketing. It's a big part of it. I mean, they have their logo and their business card and their headshot, but the quality of the photography on their listings reflects back on the effort they put in as an agent. So if they want to attract sellers, you know, quality sellers with quality listings, and it's the same for all levels of quality, but if you're going after the higher end listings, you're not going to get those. You're not going to have the trust of those sellers if you're using your phone or your own photography.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the way you started that answer, it's just they're not as good. It's pretty much bottom line when you use your phone. So
And then I lost my train of thought and got back to what I wanted to say. Yeah.
right on.
But it is definitely a reflection of the agent. And you're not going to see, you might see bad agents who happen to find, I don't want to say bad, but less professional agents who happen to use a good photographer. But you're not going to find really good quality agents that are going to use low quality photography. I mean, yeah.
So like we all have to have jobs, right? And this is
hmm
your job, and we don't always love our jobs every day, but I'm curious what are things that you find rewarding about doing real estate photography, and also what are some difficult things about it?
I've always had an appreciation for architecture, design, interior design. So getting to go into homes, not every home is fun, not every home's enjoyable, but they're okay. Every now and then you get to one that's, what you call an as is flip, investor flip or something, and it just doesn't even matter what your photos look like. Um, but when you go into a really nice home that's well furnished and the lighting's nice and you can really create good compositions, it's fun, it's rewarding, it's creatively satisfying. Now, when you walk in an empty room that's gray walls and nothing in it and not much to work with, yeah, it's a job. But even a kind of bad day at this job is still pretty fun. I mean, I'm out and about. I'm not sitting at a desk all day. And thankfully, most of the homes I get to do are pretty nice.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of real estate photography, enough to realize that I kind of like that too about it. Just it's
hmm
kind of fun just walking through different people's houses in different parts of the city that maybe you would never otherwise go to. It's just kind of interesting. Kind of like I
I've
also
gotten,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
I've gotten really familiar with every corner of Atlanta area. And I grew up here. I thought I knew it. There's, yeah, all over the place. And there's a downside to that. I would rather be behind a camera than behind the wheel. And there are definitely days when I spend a lot more time driving than I do shooting. But it's part of it. You just kind of have to, some days are better than others. You just kind of have to take it and be thankful that you're not working in office somewhere.
Yeah, relatable. I had a lot of years working in an office, and I'm glad I'm not doing that right now.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd love to hear if you have any stories that sort of jump out at you from all of your time doing real estate photography, being in different kinds of homes all over the place. Like, what are some weird situations, some bad experiences, some cool experiences, any famous houses, haunted houses? I don't know.
Yeah, nothing too exciting. I mean, a lot of the work that I've done in Jamaica is, some of those places have history and famous visitors and or owners. Those have been fun, and I've had some interesting encounters doing that. Up here, I showed up at one house where, as I'm approaching the home, there's a woman yelling at me from the front window, "You're not coming in. He's not selling this house. You're not coming in here." Next window opens, it's the husband. "I'm really sorry, Matt. I'll let you in as soon as I can find where she hid the keys." It's like,
Wow.
I wound up doing the shoot, everything but the room that she was kind of put herself in. And I mean, it's a tense situation. There have been a couple of those where it was they scheduled a photo shoot for when the husband was supposed to be at a meeting, and then he showed up and thankfully wasn't screaming and cursing at me, but was, screaming and cursing at his soon to be ex-wife. Um, and the agent and I were just looking at each other and like, she made the right decision.
Wow.
Nothing too crazy though.
I'm curious when doing residential like homes, how many of them are s- like staged with furniture and stuff in them versus what you mentioned before, just empty rooms?
Most of them, oh, there's plenty that are empty. I would say most are staged. And just for anybody that doesn't know, if the sellers have moved out and the home is empty and there's no furniture, agents will have the home staged where they rent furniture and bring it in and set it up as if somebody lives there. Um, those are honestly some of the best ones because it was all intentional. Everything is, it's minimal. Things are placed. There's nothing more that you need, but there's enough to make it look lived in and look nice and clean, and they photograph well. Um, some sellers have a lot of stuff, and the agent, if they're involved, they have them minimize and put things away and declutter and make it better. A lot of that depends on the agent and how involved they are. Um, I do shoots where the agent isn't even there. They don't really know what the place looks like, and they just, whatever happens, happens. Some get very involved, and they have their own truck or car full of staging materials, and they're there, as I'm arriving, they're finishing touches and doing things. So a lot of that depends on the agent. And even if the agent's not doing it, they will coach the sellers and work with the sellers to make sure it gets to looking how it should. But plenty of times that doesn't happen. And you kind of have to have a shoot as is policy. You don't want to get in the habit of being a mover or a maid. You're there to take pictures. And when I was first starting out and had more free time, you're a little more accommodating of that kind of thing. By the time you're doing 3 or 4 shoots a day and you've got a schedule to keep, you can't do that. So, yeah.
I feel like I always end up, even with well staged places, moving a couple things around, just tiny things. But yeah, if you end up having to rearrange all kinds of stuff, then suddenly you're there half the day and that doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do things like if I have an angle I want, but there's like a little weird corner of the lampshade sticking in the corner of the frame. I can just slide the lamp back and get it a nice clean edge and get it the way you want. And nowadays, for AI has made object removal really easy. So there are times when I'd be shooting a room and there'd be 4 U-Haul boxes stacked in the corner, and the agent or the seller would be like, "Oh, I'm going to move all those and drag them out of the room." Now, like, just leave it. I can just brush it right out. Like, I don't
Or the,
move trash cans outside if it's trash day, and it's always trash day when you do this. Like, it
yeah,
seems like every time you can show up to do a shoot that everybody's trash cans are out there. Um,
I've had to
but
move trash
I
cans and
hardly move them anymore. Yeah, it's AI makes it pretty easy.
that does bring up a question. Like when I first started doing real estate photography and I asked some people who do it, like, what are the ethics about like doing edits to the photos and like that? And the basic answer I got was like you really shouldn't do it for real estate photos, particularly if it's something like let's say there's a crack in the wall, you can't
Yeah.
edit that out because that changes it deceives about what the condition of the house is. But
Yeah.
for
I think,
something like what you're talking about, it's fine.
yeah, the general rule is I think you're not supposed to be deceptive. You're not supposed to alter the property. People want to make the grass greener. You could do that because sometimes the grass really is going to be that green, just not the time of year you did it. Sky replacement, that's fine because you're not touching the house. You're putting a blue sky when there wasn't one that day. But once you get into correcting things, even, agents will ask, well, can you clean up the driveway and clean up all the oil spots or whatever? I'm like, well, I can, yeah, or the cracks in the driveway. I can, but when somebody goes to actually look at the property, they're going to see them and they're going to know it didn't just happen. So that's that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah, I have done some sky replacements, but I haven't done a lot of that. But that's good to know that your view is that as long as it doesn't change the condition of that home, like for sky or
Yeah.
grass color, it's fine.
I mean, depending on when you go to the house, they might really have a sky that looks blue and pretty like that. But
Yeah,
if you didn't have one the day that you were there to shoot, you're making the shot a lot more appealing. I mean, to me, sky replacement is kind of standard now. I think most of the better photographers just do it, and
like
all
you
the
can't,
editors just do it.
especially if you're doing 4 houses a day, you can't do all of them at golden hour or whatever at the perfect time. So it makes sense.
Yeah. And in wintertime, a lot of times it's gray and overcast. I see people that do it, take it a little too far and it looks fake.
Yeah,
If it's
yeah.
clearly an overcast day, I don't make it too bright blue. I try to use a sky that's got, some clouds in it. Obviously it wasn't a perfect blue, clear sky day. So I try not to replace it with that.
So something I've had happen, this was with commercial property, not residential, is I showed up and the agent I was working with was there as well. And she had, this was her first time being there too. And the condition of it was just trashed. It was just completely trashed. And she was like, well, just do the best you can, and so I did. But is that something you've experienced with residential real estate photography?
Yeah. A lot of times the owner will even tell me like, hey, I haven't been there. 'Cause sometimes it's a tenant and maybe I mean, I've shot homes where I was told that the tenant doesn't know that the seller is selling and you're there to take pictures for insurance or something. Like, I
Wow.
just, yeah. So a lot of, sometimes if there's a rental and there's a tenant and the agent has been talking to the seller, but not talking to the tenant, maybe the agent and the seller don't have a great relationship, then you just kind of have to hope for the best. Um, I mean, I've had to prep, I walk in a room one time, there was I don't know what kind of gun, but big gun leaning in the corner, like machine gun type thing. AR, it might have been AR leaning in the
Okay.
corner. I was like, nah, I'm going to very carefully lay that down beside the bed. You walk in and there's like a bog on the coffee table or something. And you're like, oh, let's just put that away for the shoot.
I had that happen once. Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. I mean, there are funny little things that you have to do. I've had to, yeah,
Well, why don't we get into, since we're starting to go that way anyway, get into maybe some more practical how-to details that
yeah.
for people who are newer photographers might be eager to learn. Like, let's start with gear. You talked earlier about needing a wide-angle lens. So can you sort of run through what your core kit would be for a standard real estate shoot, like camera body, lens or lenses, tripod, whatever else
Yeah.
you bring?
I shoot with Fujifilm cameras, which are APS-C. So for that, I have a 10 to 18 millimeter lens. If you're doing full frame, you probably want to start at like the 14, 15 millimeter range. I think a lot of lenses there are like 15 to 35 or something like that. And that's where you would want to be in the full frame range. So you need a wide lens. Um, Camera body that can do brackets if you're going to shoot HDR. We'll get into that too. Um, I feel like a tripod is necessary. There are some people that claim they can do it handheld. I really don't see how inside a dark room when you need a really long exposure, how you can do that handheld. Um, So I think a tripod is essential. And it also helps you just shoot more deliberately. You're not, holding the camera up and moving. You have it, you're set up, you can look at it, maybe go this way or that way and decide, really compose your shot and make it a bit more deliberate. Cameras have a built-in level, so you're able to keep it a lot more level on a tripod. And then if you need a 3-second exposure to get to get the room right, you're good. You don't have to worry about it. So yeah, tripod, camera, and a wide lens. Flash is optional. I do use flash sometimes, not all the time. And a lot of times I'll shoot brackets like it's gonna be HDR, but I'll boost it with a little LED light, like a nice little ice light or something. So at least there's some nice color correct light in the room. And then you have a kind of a better base to start your HDR exposure from.
So why don't we talk about that a little bit? We've said HDR a few times. For people who may not know what bracketing and HDR is, can you just sort of explain that?
Yeah, HDR is high dynamic resolution. I think it's a resolution, is it? I don't want to sound like
Range,
an idiot.
dynamic range.
High dynamic range. Yeah, so you take multiple exposures at different levels. Most people are shooting either 3 brackets or 5 brackets. So a bracket is just like a burst, a set of, it's all the same shot, but you've got your middle exposure, one that's a little lighter, one that's a little darker. If you're shooting 5 brackets, and typically for real estate, you're going to do 5 brackets, 2 stops apart. So you've got, your middle bracket, and so that's the one you're looking through the LEDs and you think, well, that's kind of like a middle decent exposure. Your windows might be blown out, but you can kind of see the room. So when you hit that, it's going to take 2 that are each 2 stops lighter, and then on the other end, 2 stops darker. Those all get merged together, whether you do it yourself. There's Lightroom, there's Infuse, there's a few different products that merge your HDR together. You can use an editor, which is what I do for most, or if you have time, you can hand blend it. If you're doing volume work, I don't recommend that because it's time consuming. So there's that. And then the other main technique is flash and ambient blend, which some people call flambient. Um, and that's where you're taking an ambient exposure, could be one, could be more than one, and you're blending it with a flash exposure. In a lot of cases, that's one flash shot, and depending on the space, some people use 2 or 3. You walk to one corner and flash there. You walk to another area and flash there. And it's okay if you're in that shot, because when you merge them all together, you're just going to use that piece and cut yourself out. So that's a more complicated way to do it. My preferred way, for houses that, are nicely furnished and where color is kind of, where it's not an empty box with gray walls, I'll do HDR on that all day long. But if it's another, like a nicer home, I typically will do, for interiors, I'll do 1 3 bracket exposure, and then I'll do usually 1, sometimes 2 flash shots. Because if you have a diffuser, you can really, 1 shot can cover most areas, and then blend those together. So you get the color correctness and the kind of lightness of the flash, but you get the natural softness and shadows and stuff of the ambient shot, and it doesn't look like you just walked into a room and used a flash. So that's my preferred method.
And pretty much, my understanding is pretty much any modern camera has the ability to take bracketed shots, right? Like if you've not played around with the menu system in your camera much, you're just on probably autofocus standard or autofocus continuous or whatever on Sony, whatever it's called on Canon. And if you just look at the other options, you'll see bracketing options there, and you can play around with that and adjust how many stops there are between each bracket and whether it's a 3 or 5 bracket shots.
Yeah.
Things like
Yeah.
that.
And most cameras, you're going to have an exposure bracket. You might have ISO bracketing. So it's got different, there are different ways to bracket. I mean, for this, you want to do the exposure bracketing. ISO, everything else should be locked. And that'll bring me to the next point. I mean, your basic camera setting for this is, I use ISO 400 just because it works for pretty much everything. You don't have noise issues. And then aperture, I lock it in at 7.1. You could go 5.6 or a little lower, but the idea is that everything within the frame, everything in the room is sharp. So some people, if you didn't know, you'd think, oh, I have to go down to 2.8 to get everything in the room light enough.
Yeah, no.
Yes, but you're not going to have half the room in focus. So you want to stick to pretty high aperture. And then really what you're varying is shutter speed, and that's what you vary to get the amount of light that you need. The other things really should pretty much stay fixed.
Yeah. My starting point is 8.0 aperture, but yeah, almost the same as what you use, it sounds like. So what would you say your shooting workflow looks like from, like, say, from the moment you get to a house you're going to be shooting to the time you leave?
I prefer to start outdoors, just because I'm there. I might as well get right to it. So I like to just start outside at the front if I can. Also, a lot of times, if the weather's good when you get there, just do it because
Yeah.
that possibly could change while you're inside. Um, so I like to do that, get all my exteriors done, and then once I go in the door, um, I kind of try to shoot them in a way that most agents are going to present them. I mean, you can always rearrange them after, but I usually start at the foyer or the entryway and just kind of work through the main level. Um, it also helps you not skip rooms and forget things, to be pretty methodical about it. So I just work through the main level. Then if there's an upstairs, you go upstairs, kind of work through that level, and downstairs if there's a basement. Um, and just be very methodical, because there's nothing worse than having to drive back somewhere to get a photo of a bathroom that you overlooked. And it never happens on the ones that are close to home. If you miss a room and you have to go back, which is really the right thing to do, even if it's a really insignificant shot like a bathroom, you can't tell the agent, oh, well, just take it with your phone. If you missed it, you have to go back and make it right. Um, and that never happens on the ones that are convenient. So you just, go through and that's it. But
So
typically I do, well, to elaborate on that too, all of your main spaces, I'll usually get three, sometimes even, like a main living room, I might shoot from each corner. Um, if there's a reason to shoot straight on, typically you want to shoot from an angle. It's a lot more forgiving. You can shoot three walls of the room. It makes it look bigger. But if you walk into a place that's got like, this big fireplace, and on either side, you've got these arch windows, it's all very symmetrical. Sometimes that's a really nice straight on shot, or like into a kitchen island. And you've got the bar stools and the lights. And, so, usually 3 to 4 angles on main spaces, bedrooms. You shouldn't need more than 2 angles on any bedroom. Sometimes just one on the secondary bedroom. Um, and yeah, so that's it. You just go room by room, and each room has different needs.
and I imagine you have to probably go through and make sure all the lights are turned on and all the window shades are how you want them, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I skipped that part of the workflow, didn't I? So yeah, usually
That's
as I walk in the door, if the agent hasn't already done it, um, get blinds open, lights on, ceiling fans off, because people don't realize you're using a longer exposure. If it's on, it's just going to be a big blurry circle up there. So you want the
yeah.
fans off. There are a lot of people that do this, that swear by lights off. They call themselves the lights off gang in the Facebook groups and stuff. Yeah, there's a hashtag lights off gang, and you can check it out. But there's an argument for that, because a lot of lighting creates problems, different color casts. Some, if you're doing videos, certain lights kind of flicker a little bit. So there's a good argument for that. But it kind of depends on the look you want. Some agents don't like the idea. They feel like you have to have the lights on, and they kind of resist having lights off. It all depends on the scenario. But there are times when I will generally shoot with lights on, but there's a particular light that's, there's those kind of old timey looking bulbs with the big filaments that are like really orange. Um, Sometimes I'll tell the agent, like, hey, that's kind of throwing everything off. Let's just leave that one off. And they're fine with that.
Makes sense.
Most will trust your judgment on those kind of things.
So let's say with, for example, wedding photography, photographers are sometimes known for a particular style that they have. Like this wedding photographer does light and airy. This photographer does whatever. With real estate photography, how would you describe your style? Do you feel like you have a distinctive style, or does it really vary based on the property?
Yeah, I mean, I just try to choose really good angles. I try to, there's some that there's kind of the real estate look, which is all super wide angles, super bright and clear, everything kind of level and flat. It's the agreeable gray equivalent of photographing a room. And then there's, just like with other styles of photography, some people want a little more dark and moody, or they want a little more natural. There's one guy I think is amazing. He's out of Connecticut. His name is Alan Barry. And his whole thing is he kind of makes the room dark and adds light. I think most of his shots are one single flash exposure. It's just how he does it and where he places it. Uh, Most real estate agents would probably not want that. I mean, it looks really cool, but is that what's going to sell? That to me looks great in a magazine. I
Yeah.
think it looks great on a real estate listing too, but it's not what a lot of agents would want. So you have to, your style's a little bit constrained by kind of, I don't know what you'd say, kind of market standards or what agents expect or what people expect. You have a little bit of room to work within that, whether it's a certain type of color vibe or just a certain kind of composition. Um, I having done graphic design and layout and stuff like that, I kind of just look at that rectangle and think, what's kind of a cool way to fill it. Um, but you are also trying to show the home and show the room, so you can't really get into like weird abstract angles and architectural details. Those are great if you're shooting for a designer or for a builder or for an Airbnb listing, because those typically include, a little bit more of the design and detail shots, because people want to kind of get the vibe of it because they're staying there with that stuff. You realize when you're
Right.
doing a real estate shoot, they could be beautifully decorated, but when the person buys that house and they show up, that stuff ain't going to be there. So
Right.
you
True.
don't want to focus on the stuff too much. You're kind of more trying to show the room and the space.
Yeah. And that there may be particular details that they ask you to highlight, like you mentioned before, a fireplace or something like that. Make sure to
Yeah.
get that highlighted or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move into maybe a little bit more of the business side of this, how you make this all work. So how do you structure your pricing for real estate photography? Is it like by the square foot? Is it number of photos, flat rate? Like what would a beginner reasonably be able to ask for?
I do it by the square foot. I think the going rate varies by market. I mean, if you're in New York or LA, you might be charging a little more than other places. If you're in a more rural area where there's not as much of it happening, or the budgets are lower, prices are lower, kind of thing. But in Atlanta area, yeah, I would say most people are, for your average home, $200 to $300 for photos alone. My pricing varies by square foot. There's, what I would consider kind of a smaller home or an apartment up to like, I think I'd break it either 2,500 or 3,000 square feet. That's up to like kind of, at least for Atlanta area, kind of a normal kind of suburban home or an apartment or a condo. Then you get into like, once you get, say, over 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, that's a little bit bigger, takes a few more photos, a little more time. And then, once you're up above 5,000 square feet, that's, you're in the luxury home range. Your people should be paying a little bit more because it takes a lot more time. And with each of those brackets, I just tell agent, expect up to this many photos. So I never say, you're going to get X amount of photos because every place is different. But I just provide a number of what they should expect to get. If I exceed that, great. If it's a few less, you know, a lot of my work does come through one particular, Coldwell Banker, which is big in Atlanta, and I'm one of their preferred vendors. They have a listing, what they call listing concierge program. And their prices are set by them, which I honestly don't care for, but
It
yeah,
is what it is.
it is what it is. And I do get quite a bit from them. So you kind of have to look at it that way.
So that was going to be my next question, actually. Do you primarily work with like individual realtors or large brokerages, and how does, I think before you talked about word of mouth being a way that you get more clients. So a lot of your work comes from a larger real estate company.
Yeah. my first clients in Atlanta were not a part of that. So I was slowly growing the business client by client. Whether it's a friend or a family contact, and they say, "Oh, I'll give it a try," and then they do a good job, and they tell somebody else, and they tell their coworkers. Um, and then once I got into the listing concierge thing with Coldwell Banker, a lot of that you're one of five choices, and so an agent might be in the office. Oh, who did you use, or who's good, or who, whatever, and hopefully, a lot of those people slowly start telling, "Oh, we used Brian, he was great, call them." So it's grown
Yeah.
that way. I haven't had to advertise. I haven't had to, you know, on a slow day like this, I might just follow up with clients I haven't heard from in a while. Hey, how you doing? It's been a while. Anything coming up? And just to remind them that you're out there and you're
Yeah.
thinking about them. And when they have that next listing come up, hopefully they think about you and give you a call.
So it's kind of like with wedding photography. If you're a vendor that is, if there's a wedding venue and they have their list of preferred vendors, so the couple doesn't know a photographer, they would just go with whoever they have.
Yeah. The nice thing about this is good real estate agents might send me 2 to 4 or 5 listings a month. So you have repeat business, which is something I never had as a wedding photographer. Never had the same bride twice.
That's, yeah, probably for the better. So
Yep.
so beyond the shoot itself, you get to a home, you do what you said before, walking through, doing all the photos, you
Hmm.
leave. After that, how much time do you spend on editing, admin, marketing? I guess you just said you don't really do much marketing. You talked before about outsourcing your editing. Can you talk
Yep.
about that a little bit?
Yeah. There is a whole, I don't know how and exactly when it evolved, but over the past several years, there's this whole industry of real estate editors in India, and there's a bunch in Vietnam. I'm sure other places too, and there are some US based ones as well. Um, Logistically, it works because I can go out and shoot all day, come home in the evening, upload all of my photos, and then my nighttime is their daytime. So while I'm sleeping, they're editing all the photos. By the time I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, I have a link. I click the link, everything's done. Um, and then I kind of review it, make changes if I need to, and deliver. So the way the essence of my workflow is I shoot, I get home, I upload. I do usually edit my exteriors because it's easy enough to do, and I think they look better. Um, it's one thing to do color correction on an interior, and you can white balance for, find something in the room and white balance and fine. But I find that for exterior, I just don't like the way they do it. And it does get me to preserve a little bit of more of the creative ownership over the final product too, for what that's worth. I get home, I kind of upload or I download my exteriors to my computer. I upload everything else to the editor. When I get the editor's stuff back in the morning, I review it. I might have a few little changes or tweaks, put it all together, and deliver to my client.
So you have a turnaround time, it sounds like, of 24 hours or maybe even less. Is that right?
In most cases, yeah. Anything I shoot one day is delivered by 9 a.m. the next day. So I try to schedule my shoots to where the first shoot is at 10 a.m. So even if I do have a little bit of that, first of all, then traffic is that means I'm not leaving the house till 9 or after, because most shoots are, within an hour. So yeah, if traffic's died down, it gives me a couple hours in the morning to review everything from the day before, get it sent off, and then, have all that done before I go out and shoot again the next day.
Yeah, that's really good because a lot of times, in my experience at least, if somebody's asking you to take photos, they have everything else ready and they want the photos right away so they can put the listing up. And so they, a lot of the time, really do want that quick turnaround. That's amazing that you can provide that even shooting 3, 4 properties a day.
Some people ask for same day, which, I'll tell them in most cases, look, I can give you some exteriors so you at least have something you can put on the listing, because you can't just put a listing up on MLS with no photos. Uh, I think that's very much frowned upon, if not like outright not tolerated. But so you have to have something. So I'll do that if they really need it. But yeah, I mean, you can wait till the next morning. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, so now I want to change the topic a little bit and talk about some of the newer developments, relatively newer developments in real estate photography, particularly drone photos, aerial photography, and video more generally. Are those things you do? And in your opinion, are those things that are necessary to do real estate photography in this day and age?
Yes and yes. I wish I had gotten into drones sooner, um, because it's kind of fun and I like it. And years ago when they first came out, I was living in Jamaica. I could have been one of the first people to really been doing a lot of that there. It's a couple other people that beat me to that. But for real estate, yeah, I mean, I would say at least a third of my shoots order it. Um, but they don't cost that much. It's not that hard to get the license to do it legally. And yeah, I mean, you should absolutely do it. Video, I don't love video, but again, it's another thing where you just kind of have to do it because agents want, just like with weddings, everybody wants a one-stop shop. They don't want to be like, oh, well, he's my guy for photos, and I'm going to schedule this other person for video. One person, one time. They only have to be there once. The seller's only kind of got to get the place ready once. It's just, yeah, you have to.
So with drones, I assume that's for exterior photos, not you're not doing a drone through the home.
No,
But
no, but I do use a drone for if I'm doing a video, even if they didn't like want aerial video, I'll use the drone for the exterior shots because, you can walk with a gimbal and that's fine, but it's still not as steady as using a drone. So just for that main approach coming up to the house for your video, you could do that with a drone. It's just so much easier.
and then for video interior, what do you use? You just mentioned a gimbal. Do you just use your same camera with a gimbal and walk through, or how do you do
I
it?
used to use the camera and I used to have a big old DJI Ronin gimbal. I still have it. Most these days now, I'm just doing it with a little mobile gimbal and my phone. If you have a good quality phone and you know the settings, you can get a great result. I mean, these are minute to minute and 30-second social media reels. I mean, if it's a multi-million-dollar home, I want a more like kind of cinematic video tour. Yes, I will definitely use my camera and I'll use the big gimbal. But for these little quick vertical videos, it's just so much easier. You don't have to mount the gimbal, get it all balanced and then walk around with it. And what really sold me on it was I was doing this mountain home where you're walking through the living room and this huge glass with the view. With my regular camera, I mean, I could get the room exposure and you weren't going to see out the window at all. Um, Somehow the camera on the phone is able to expose both pretty well. Like it just does things with exposure that I have not been able to do with my, real camera. Uh,
Interesting.
so yeah, I mean, I found that you definitely want to, not do auto white balance because if you're walking through room to room and the white balance is shifting, it doesn't look good. So what I typically will do is I'll walk into the room, I'll I'll set the white balance and, automatically in that room, get it right, start recording, and then I'll kind of back out of the room a little bit and then come back into it. Because a lot of times if you don't do that, you're out in the hallway, it's color balancing for that. And then you walk in the room and you see the shift. Just like you shouldn't really exposure shift if you can help it. But yeah, if you set a phone right, you're going to get great results if you have a good phone.
So do you do multiple video clips and then do editing to edit them
Yeah.
together afterwards? Okay.
Yeah. And I edit my own video too, which I don't know. I felt like by the time I review all the clips, decide what I want to use, trim off the parts that I don't want used, and get everything prepped and sent off to the editor. I mean, I've halfway edited already. I might as well just do it. Um,
And
so
do you put
that's my approach.
do you mute the sound on them, or are you narrating, or do you add music? Like, no.
No, I mute the sound on the videos. A lot of times I'll edit to music, but some companies don't want music, like Coldwell Banker. they're going to take that video clip and put it in their own little kind of template, and they'll add the music themselves. So they don't want any text, they don't want any music. Some agents, if they're doing it for their own social media, they want music. Some of them want it silent because they want to add their own music. I kind of, you just kind of have to ask the client what they want. I like editing the music because I like seeing it happen in the video. I like that it kind of clicks together. Most of the ones I do nowadays there's no music, and if there's narration, it's going to be the agent recording. So I have, little microphone set up for that. I don't do that many where the agent wants to be on camera, but a few.
Okay.
Yeah. Some agents, they want to be on camera and they want to do the little walking through and the intro and all that. And that's fine. But I don't do that many of those.
So another question, what about Airbnbs and short-term rentals? Is that something you do? Is that something that you think there are pros and cons that people would be want to hear about?
No, it is. And I like doing them. Slightly different approach in that again, you're not focused on the room and the space as much as kind of, the vibe and the things in it. So you're going to get the room, but you're also going to kind of get detail shots of the decor, of some of the stuff, the kitchen, the practical things, like here's the coffee maker and here, and you're not going to show that stuff in a real estate shot because coffee maker's not going to be there when they sell the house. So you do, a little bit more of kind of what I would call vibe shots, just to kind of show the feel of the place. And then the usage is very different. So most people, because a real estate listing, you're licensing it for a limited amount of time for that one person to use until the home is sold. It might be 2 weeks, it might be 2 months, but once a home is sold, your photos are done. They could be using those same photos for 5 years and generating income with those, and it's an investment. So it's a little bit different. I typically charge 2.5 times I would for a similar real estate shoot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, most people charge at least double.
Because of
Some,
that, for that reason, because they'll be used ongoing for years, so they have a
yeah,
higher
and
value.
some sellers get it. Some don't understand because there's maybe an Airbnb owner's got a referral from an agent, and the agent's like, oh yeah, it's usually only like $200 for a shoot or $300 for a shoot. So they kind of expect it to be that, and you have to explain to them and walk them through it. Well, the licensing and the usage is a bit different, but also the shooting is a bit different. It's typically spend a little bit more time. You're not just like getting each room from each corner kind of thing. You're spending a little bit more time. That's how I try to justify it and get them to understand. But yeah, not everybody. I'm sure there are plenty of people that charge the same, but I think most people that do this charge at least double.
Okay. So let's say somebody's listened for all of this time, 40 something minutes, and now they're like, I want to try this. I want to give a shot at real estate photography. Like, for someone who has the equipment or gets the equipment and wants to take their first step into real estate photography, what would be the advice you'd give them to get started?
Like anything you want to learn, YouTube is a great place to start. There's a ton of videos. A lot of them are about editing. A lot of them are about shooting approach. But there's a lot to be learned there. Everybody, hopefully if you have a camera and are thinking about doing this, you have a home, practice on your own home or on your family's home. You can just start shooting a space and practice. And then, look at what other people are doing. You can scroll through Zillow and, say, oh, this looks like good photography, and kind of look through and see there. There's a Facebook group I'm a part of. I think I invited you, called Real Estate Photographers.
Yep.
It might be, I think it's Real Estate Photographers, not photography. That's a great group. Learned a lot in there. If you're new and you want to post work in there, be prepared to be critiqued. They're not brutal, but they'll let you know what needs to improve. So basically get your camera, tripod, lens, lighting, if you want to use lighting, and just try it. basic rules are kind of keep your shots level, keep your verticals should be vertical. I think that's a mistake that a lot of rookies and a lot of agents make when they do their own is, you're level this way, but you're not level this way. So your walls are all kind of going like this. Keep your verticals straight, and I mean that's it. If you're shooting a 5 bracket exposure and you want to just experiment, do that and just merge them in Lightroom and see how it goes. I think you'll find you might be disappointed. Like depending on how, every room and every lighting is different. I'm not happy with the auto HDR results from Lightroom. And that's why I use an editor, because it just looks a lot better. I
Yeah,
could do it myself, but who's got the time? I mean, really.
I don't do enough real estate to where it would make sense that I would need to outsource it. So I just edit it myself when I do it. And when I do the HDR, I'll then edit after it merges the images usually I have to brighten it up a little bit, but
Yeah.
do some
And you've
other
got to get
little
rid
things.
of color casts, and your whites will almost never be white. So you can select by color range and Lightroom, select all your whites and kind of desaturate them. I mean, there's little easy things you can do to make it look better. But for me, I can get home from work, spend half an hour kind of sorting and uploading everything, and then enjoy my evening. If I had to edit all of that stuff, I'd be editing until I went to bed, and then I'd get up the next morning and shoot, and I would never not be working.
Yeah, no, that's no good. What, well, those are most of the questions I wanted to ask. I just wanted to end maybe with some quick questions with maybe some quick answers.
Yeah, I
Ready
was
for,
checking your list to see if you forgot anything. But yeah,
okay.
I think you got it.
So what's one piece of gear that you'd say you can't live without, aside from your camera, of course?
For this, I would say a tripod.
What's your favorite time of day to shoot a home's exterior?
Whenever the sun is on the front, um, preferably a little bit overhead. So if there's trees nearby, you don't have shadows on the house. But really, and again, that depends on the house and where it's facing. But typically, you want to shoot the front when the sun is on it, not
What's
behind
your,
the house.
yep. What's your biggest pet peeve when you walk into a house to shoot?
My biggest pet peeve starts before I even walk in the house. If I pull up to a house and they know that I'm there to take photographs and there's cars in the driveway,
Uh,
it's a bad sign. And if it's the agent's car in the driveway, that's kind of a newer agent, because they know you
they
don't
should
park
know
in
to
the
get it out of the
driveway.
way.
Yeah. And if you're a beginner doing this, that's one of the things too. Do not park in the driveway. If you can help it, don't park right outside the front, because then you see your car through the living room window when you're looking out.
Yes.
Every now and then you get a curious neighbor who looks out like, why is this person parking in front of my house and going over there? But
Right.
yeah.
Yep. I learned that the hard way. Park in front of a neighboring house, not outside, unless you want your car in all the pictures, like you said.
Yeah. Thankfully it's easy enough to remove now if you catch it. But yeah, you don't want to be parked right outside the window.
And then last question, finish this sentence. A great real estate photo always has.
I would say just kind of angles to just, whether it's in the walls or in the furniture, just something to kind of draw your eye into the space. Something that doesn't make it just a flat room, a flat scene,
That's a great answer. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I agree. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Brian, for sharing your
Sure.
story and your insights into real estate photography. And I think you've shared a lot of information here that's really valuable for people who might be interested in getting into real estate photography. Can you tell us where people can look at some of your work?
Yeah. My website is LuxRE Photo. So that's LUXRE photo.net. I think it's LuxRE Photography on Facebook, and on Instagram, I think it's LuxRE Photo as well. So all of there, when I'm really busy shooting, I don't update any of those as often as I should, but Facebook probably gets the most updating, because I know a lot of my agents are on that and they follow my page and they'll see it. But yeah, that's where you can see what I do.
All right. Thanks, Brian. And thanks to everyone who's watching or listening to get the picture. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our other great upcoming episodes. Now go out and get the picture.